It's taking a second. Okay. Looks like I am live now. Hello. Hello.
The class war. No war. The class war.
Let me know if you can see it on
The class war. No war.
might take a second.
Class war.
Back. Man, what's the common topic today? What happened? What's the common? What's going on?
No nukes. No troops. No to NATO groups. No nukes. No troops. No to NATO groups. No nukes. No troops. No to NATO groups. No nukes. No troops.
Okay.
No to NATO groups.
Hello. Hello. All right, guys. I am here. Sorry for the late start. Traffic was pretty bad. Can you guys hear me on the mic?
Peaceful.
You hear me?
Peaceful.
It is cold. It is very cold.
Peaceful.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. All right, guys.
Hear the call. Peaceful.
I'm going to try to get out of the way a little bit here.
Hear the call. Peaceful.
All right, I am here outside at Boston Common for the anti-war rally here in Boston. Hope you guys can hear me okay. Okay, you said it sound good? Okay, thank you. All right, guys. They're going to get started here soon. I'm going to go ahead and glance over here so you can see.
No war. No war. No war. No war. No war. No war. Down with the war. Up with the people. Down with the war. Down with the war. Down with the war. Down with the war. Down with the war.
You guys can see me.
No family mass arrest. No family mass arrest.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to try to get some interviews, guys.
5, 6, 7, 8. We will not participate. 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't want your dirty war. 5, 6, 7, 8. We will not participate. 1, 2, 3, 4.
We don't want your dirty war.
5, 6, 7, 8.
We will not participate.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We don't want your dirty war.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Jesus, cold. It's so cold.
The people united
We'll never be defeated.
The people united will never be defeated.
Hello.
The people united.
I'm going to scoop down here so you guys can see.
No
I didn't stream on Rockfin because I can't do it from my phone and stream from my phone at the same time. So that's why we're not on Rockfin. I'll have to upload it to Rockfin after.
Sharing all their blood money. The bourgeoisie sitting in a tree.
Sharing all their blood money.
The bourgeoisie.
Well, I forgot to tweet it out on Twitter. Fuck.
The bourgeoisie sitting in a tree.
Sharing all their blood money.
The bourgeoisie sitting in a tree.
Sharing all their blood money.
Overworked and underpaid workers on strike for a better wage. Overworked and underpaid workers on strike for a better wage. Overworked and underpaid workers on strike for a better pay.
Corey, could you do it?
All right, we're gonna get started now.
I'm going to try to get some interviews if you can.
I'm gonna hand it off to
if they want
Sam. We're gonna give some opening remarks,
Just
talking about
Anybody
what we're
like
today.
participating.
We know why we're here today,
Yeah.
but to just clarify it.
All right, about to get started, guys. About to get started. Guys, please share as well.
Today, you know, we're coming out here in solidarity against the war in Ukraine and in solidarity with the Italian general strike that happened and the many general strikes that have been happening in Europe. You know, some people are out here because of those reasons, but we want to elaborate on them a little bit more. For 9 months and counting, the war in Ukraine has been ravaging the country. And when you do a cursory search for what's happening, and you type in articles on the war, you get multitudes of articles saying, oh, the Russia-Ukraine war. Those headlines span corporate news medias. You turn on CNN, oh, the Ukraine-Russia war. You watch any press house conference, and the same Russia-Ukraine war is being spewed by the mouths of various political figures. This rampant propaganda leads us to believe that the war is principally a war between Ukraine and Russia, but that's not true. It's principally a war between Russia and the US, with the EU and NATO as secondary allies in the supposed defense of democracy. But no amount of blue and yellow flags that Boston city officials fly or flash on the I-93, no amount of Ukrainian flag pins worn on the labels of Democratic counselors, no amount of statements of solidarity made by Forbes 500 companies can obscure the fact that this war has absolutely nothing to do with defending Ukrainian independence and everything to do with the various elite of the world's superpowers dueling it out and trying to submit Ukraine to their various political and economic dominance. This is a war between Russia and the US with support from NATO and EU allies. Well, media outlets and government officials would rather have us believe that Putin's invasion was merely a spontaneous act of a madman. This war has its root in a long-standing conflict between the two powers to control the population and resources of Ukraine. In short, this war is the latest iteration of the great game in which the big bullies of the world fight for global supremacy and use the small, depressed countries of the world as their battlefields, with the potential for a catastrophic world war lurking in the background. And the nearly $100 billion that the US has spent on this war, on CIA operations, military advisory trainings of Ukrainian officials, and tens of thousands of soldiers ready for deployment at the snap of a finger, absolutely should concern us and wake us up to the fact that it is our own war. And when I say our own war, I do not mean a war for you or I, because it is not for us. It is not our war. It is a war being waged for the likes of CEOs and hedge fund managers, government officials, and a slew of other uber rich and their politically connected. The politically connected of the US monopoly capitalist class. We should not need a draft to be concerned about what's going on in Ukraine right now. We need the people of this country to take a stand against the US elite's dirty war in Ukraine.
And this rich man's war is exacerbating the already existing economic crisis as a result of the decaying capital system. A crisis that has created an increasingly more dire and miserable situation for working people at home and in countries abroad. And we're seeing the effects of this crisis play out right now with the price of basic food items like grains and wheat, poultry and produce that have shot through the roof. And especially across the European continent, but here as well, we're seeing the price of gas used to cook your food, used to heat your home, used to fuel your car, shooting through the roof as well. And rent payments you need to make to your landlord in order to keep a roof over your head, and the head of your family is chewing through an ever-growing larger part of the wages you get on a weekly basis. And this is on top of the pre-existing luxury price tags attached to paying for things like your life insurance, your house insurance, your auto insurance, your health insurance, and the insurance for your kids as well if you've got them. So in short, what we're talking about here is the cost of the very basic goods needed to maintain one's life, aka the cost of being able to stay alive, taking up more and more, larger and larger portions of the wages made by working people. And for years, these wages have not risen with inflation. And we're seeing the particularly crippling effects of that now as inflation shoots up to unseen heights. And this soaring price tag on life, coupled with sinking wages, has increasingly forced the masses of people into a position where they have to choose between death or debt. And in many cases, swaths of people are stranded somewhere between these two extremes, taking on debt here and there in order to survive and sustain the meager existence and quality of life offered in this oppressive and decaying society. And not only have the big bosses gone to depress our wages, but over the years, they've moved to outright slash various benefits, crumbs, if you will, once allocated to workers. And with the escalating economic crisis, corporate bosses have turned large sums of workers, converting many of them into the population of the reserve armies of the unemployed, firing them left and right. And those people, those of the unemployed, they are the people that get sucked up and spit out again at the will of these corporate bosses. The bosses have also looked to improve their bottom line by extending the workday, undermining the 8-hour workday fought for by laboring people, forcing their workers into 14-hour-long shifts or longer if they can find loopholes to do it. But likewise, workers are even electing to take up these 14-hour shifts and beyond because of the fact that an 8-hour shift can no longer pay for the basic necessities that one needs in their life. And in order to increase their bottom line, labor intensity has gone through the roof year to year as well, with technology adding and creating metrics and algorithms in order to ensure that workers are being pushed to their physical and mental limits, being squeezed of the amount of labor power that they can perform on a day's work. But just like a pressure cooker, there are only so many attacks that can be made on the masses until the situation reaches an explosive tipping point and the masses of people begin to attack back. And we are seeing the likes of this occurring across Europe right now and in various countries in Asia, in Africa, and we're seeing it start to happen here. General strikes have been called across the European continent, in Belgium, in Italy, as well as in Hungary. And there have been strikes in France, in the UK, and more. Workers under publishing companies like HarperCollins have gone on strike. Workers under the New York Times have recently gone on strike. Workers at Starbucks, at over 100 Starbucks across the country, have gone on strike. And of course, the rail workers, they attempted to go on strike as well, but they were threatened. They were threatened by Congress and told that they could not go on strike for the most basic of crumbs.
That's right.
But even these crumbs, yeah, they were too much for the corporate bosses to hand over. And I fear that this strike would inspire other workers to rise up against their big bosses. Congress, shut it down. As it happens in times of crisis, the government reveals the nature of their existence. That being their alignment with the big bosses and need to suppress the will of the masses. But this maneuver by Congress should make it clear to all of us that there is fear that exists right now in the upper echelons of society about the workers gaining ever more clarity about the antagonism that they have with the state and their corporate bosses. And the more this struggle and clarity about the power that the masses have when they come together, the greater the possibility we have in overturning this decrepit and oppressive society. In attempting to increase their bottom line and submit the population to their control, capitalists and the capitalist state sow the seeds for their own undoing. And it's up to us to stand together and oppose these rich man's wars, to oppose the economic effects of the wars across the world, the attacks by corporate bosses on the toiling masses, and the state's maneuvers to protect their capitalist counterparts. Down with the war!
Down with the war!
Up with the working people! And solidarity with the striking laborers across the continent of Europe and here in America! All right, so we're going to have another person speak right now, Jay.
Hi, folks. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm a member of the Boston May Day Coalition, and I'm glad that everybody's out here in opposition to endless USA wars. Thousands of Ukrainians and Russians have already died in the United States proxy war with Russia. The war continues to enrich the military-industrial complex. We know war causes great destruction and increases the climate crisis. The climate crisis, yes, war increases that. War is a great evil. Standing in protest against the United States war profiteers is a daunting task, but we are here to take on that task. We are determined to prevail, and we will prevail. Continuing the proxy war until the last Ukrainian will not help them. But that seems to be what the war economy is demanding. The propaganda in support of this war is intense. The threat of nuclear war breaking out by design or accident is real. Will this war weaken Russia as our government wants? The reality seems to be that it is causing hardship for Europeans, and to a certain extent in our country too, with the rising cost of living. Our bloated military spending is approved by Democrats, Republicans alike. Homelessness continues to increase. And we still do not have universal single-payer health care in the United States, among the other things we need and deserve as a so-called advanced society. Approximately 60,000 people a year die in the United States because they cannot access health care, or not in time because they lack health insurance. Another way, another world is possible. Let us continue to demand an end by the rule of the oligarchs and royal profiteering. If we work and stand together, we the people, we will achieve our just demands. Today in Boston, we demand an end to war.
Thank you, Jane. Yes. Next up is John McLeod from the Committee for Human Rights.
So good afternoon, everybody. We're out here because we believe that we need to end this war in Ukraine. It is a war between United States and Europe versus Russia, and actually versus Russia and China. You may have noticed that Russia and China made a joint declaration. I think it was February 4th of this year. I may have that, maybe it was the previous. Made a joint declaration, and since that time have been coordinating, because both of those countries are under attack by the United States. Economic attack, military encirclement, surrounding with all forms of weapons, an arms race that has no limits, and under the cover of propaganda and aggressive so-called diplomacy. So this has been happening. I passed a demonstration in favor of Taiwan separatism as I took the Red Line shuttle on the crappy Red Line, which is being destroyed by our own capitalism here today, right? It took me more than an hour to get here. And that's the state of our public sphere. Look at the pavement down here that's decaying. This is a public sphere. Look up at the private sphere, that shiny building up there, right? This is a capitalist extraction. Well, the same kind of extraction is what's causing these wars, because we have a world system that has been dominated by Europe and now America, the Anglosphere in Europe, for centuries. And that system, that world system. Why is it that UN Security General Gutierrez always favors the United States? Why is it that the international institutions, like the IMF and the World Bank, are under their thumb? And the international IAEA, Atomic Energy as well. It's because the world is still dominated by a Eurocentric system. It's not just a clash between big military powers. It's a clash between the dying Eurocentric system and its capitalism. The Eurocentric system is against the people of the world. Take away the golden billion, those evildoers who sit atop the pinnacle of power, take that away, and the majority of the world will determine its own destiny. Because the rest of the world, the ROW, is bigger than Europe, bigger than the United States, bigger than any one country. The rest of the world will determine their destiny. I have some quotes I'm going to read. This is from Frantz Fanon, who was an intellectual, deeply thinking about what is colonization and decolonization, and what is Eurocentrism. He says, 2 centuries ago, a former European colony decided to catch up with Europe. It succeeded so well that the United States of America became a monster, in which the taints, the sickness, and the inhumanity of Europe have grown to appalling dimensions. Comrades, have we not other work to do than to create a third Europe? The West saw itself as a spiritual adventure. It is in the name of the spirit, in the name of the spirit of Europe, that Europe, and now America, has made her encroachments, that she has justified her crimes and legitimized the slavery in which she holds 4/5 of humanity. That's Frantz Fanon in The Wretched of the Earth, Part 6. So that slavery in which Europe is holding the great majority of humanity still happens. We have a neo-colonial system. And this war is not just a war between 2 countries, it's between the dying Eurosphere, its dominance, the American and the Anglosphere. And I'm not quite done.
It's okay.
To the people. Hello, guys.
So I have a statement here. We hear all about this war, which is actually a war of aggression against Russia. Nobody's going to say it, but that's what it is. That's what it is. 80% of the Russian people believe that they are experiencing the Great Patriotic War in which Germany invaded Russia. They're experiencing it now in the form where America turned Ukraine into a battering ram with which to attack Russia. I believe that's true. But I'm going to read what the Chinese defense minister has to say about it. This is Chinese State Councilor and Defense Minister General Wei Fengwei at the CSO-CIS meeting, and he's speaking only the other day. He says the world is now in a period of turbulence and transformation, and the game of solidarity and division, cooperation and confrontation has become increasingly prominent. And he says, additionally, the path we must take to meet security challenges, get out of development difficulties, and achieve lasting peace and security requires a shared future for humanity. We should replace division with solidarity, confrontation with cooperation, and exclusion with inclusiveness. Now, why do I read this? Why do I read this? Because we're in a shit pit right here of propaganda and nonsense. But the world is bigger, so much bigger than New York, Washington, D.C., and our propaganda sources. And we, the people of the world, the great majority of the world, the ROW, the rest of the world, will determine the future. Thank you very much. And one more thing about this war, fight, fight, fight to end this war for the people. Thank you.
Yes. Down with the war, up with the people. 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 Awesome, awesome. I have a statement here I'm going to read right before we have our next speaker come up. Papers flying everywhere. Okay. This is from the United Front Committee for a Labour Party. We support your United Front action against U.S. intervention in the NATO alliance. We need to build a mass working class united front against imperialist wars that are leading us toward a global war. We also support the labor action of the working class against war and the action by the Italian SI Covas and other unions in Italy are lessons that U.S. workers and unions can learn from. We also condemn and protest the continued support of the imperialist war by the AFL-CIO leadership and other national U.S. unions to continue to support this war and the tens of billions of U.S. taxes on the military-industrial complex. These funds are being expended while workers are being charged for COVID tests and treatment, and millions are facing massive inflation, which are actually just wage cuts. The recent action of the AFL-CIO president, Liz Schuler, to support the supposed rail workers agreement, which included no paid sick leave, as another example of the real role of this pro-capitalist pro-imperialist trade union bureaucracy, which works hand in glove with the union busters. The AFL-CIO and its Solidarity Center, which is funded with the $75 million from the National Endowment for Democracy, which comes from the U.S. government, was critically involved in Ukraine, where it supported the privatization program of AID and the State Department. They funded and supported right-wing unions that were aligned with oligarchs who wanted more privatization and theft of public resources. The United Front Committee for our Labor Party will deepen its work not only against U.S. wars abroad, but the war on workers at home. The need for mass general strike action against imperialist war and union busting must be fought for as well as a mass democratic labor party. Workers in this country have no political alternative, and the warmongers of both parties are united when it comes to funding billions more for the war in Ukraine and against Russia, as well as the encirclement of China. Solidarity from coast to coast, not one more dime for imperialist war. The AFL-CIO, they were also a part of NAFTA, the trade agreement in Mexico, impoverished and also forced a lot of the peasants out of work because of the bombardment of commodities from the U.S. So we're going to have another person speak. Luke from the Revolutionary Marxist Student Group is going to come up here. Luke.
Hi, everyone. I'm speaking on behalf of the Revolutionary Marxist students from the Boston area. We are here in solidarity with the general strike in Italy and the strength of those workers. But just as Sai Kobas laid out, this is about far more than just workers' rights. Even in the U.S., we see our rail workers struggling against the horrible conditions put on them by the ruling class, and both Democrats and Republicans uniting against them. We see so-called progressives voting against what the rank-and-file workers are asking for. They put on a big show about caring for workers and fighting back against the corrupt U.S. capitalist system, but it's all just aesthetics and a way to keep people complacent and content within this system. The progressive politicians aren't in power to change anything. They're in power to trick oppressed people into thinking they are cared for. But politicians like AOC, who's labeled a socialist at times, voted against the rail workers and stood by the terrible contracts their terrible union gave them. They are given virtually no sick leave and brutal hours. The Italian workers have been treated similarly, if not more acutely, having to recently contend with the pandemic and now soaring costs of living with cut wages, a neo-fascist prime minister, and getting cut off from oil due to the war that we fund in Ukraine. When wars like the war in Ukraine are waged, it is not the rich who pay for them. It is the working class through increased hours, worse living and working conditions, and every other abuse that the ruling class can carry out without killing us. And they will continue to as long as the Russian Empire and the American Empire fight. And even when their blood money comes from their wars, they will still not treat us any better. But the fight for better conditions in America, Italy, and everywhere else extends beyond just a pay raise or less hours or better sick leave. It is about mass struggle against the ruling class and putting an end to imperialist powers like the US and Russia. In Ukraine, we see a proxy war for two imperial powers that accomplishes nothing for workers in Italy and every other country other than more strife. What we see in Ukraine is the inevitable clashing of empires and the worldwide suffering this clash causes, as these moments of temporary peace we've been seeing between the US and Russia are just that, temporary. We, the revolutionary Marxist students, see the need to join these struggles as students and stand in solidarity with the workers at home and abroad. The struggle does not and cannot end with just a better contract. The struggle will not stop as long as imperialist, capitalist powers like the US or Russia exist. The antagonisms of the ruling class on the working class exists in many more ways other than the imperial wars, as we can see at home right now with our rail workers. No matter what outcome for rail workers are or what outcome of the Ukraine war is, the struggle must continue. It does not end just at concessions. The general strike of Italy will be hard, but it is necessary action to fight for better working conditions and quality of life. If rail workers were to strike here in the US, They would have caused a $2 billion hit to the U.S. economy each day they remained on strike. Congress knew this and moved to crush the strike, justifying their repression with claims that the rail workers would have sent the country into crisis. Despite the fact this crisis solely falls on the shoulder of the capitalist class and exacerbated by the bloody war overseen and encouraged by bodies of the state and their capitalist counterparts. However, the threat of that strike is in and of itself an example of the radical action that needs to be taken during people's struggles. We as the people, we as the workers, have the power to bring the ruling class's machine of power to a screeching halt and force them to give us what we deserve.
All right.
War, famine, mass unrest. No politician can fix this mess. War, famine, mass unrest.
No politician can fix this mess.
War, famine, mass unrest.
No politician can fix this mess.
War, famine, mass unrest.
No politician can fix this mess.
Woo!
Congress say whatever you like. We know you squash the railroad strike. Congress say whatever you like. We know you squash the railroad strike. Congress say whatever you like. We know you squash the railroad strike. Congress say whatever you like. We know you squash the railroad strike. Congress say whatever you like.
We know you squash the railroad strike.
Congress say whatever you like.
We know you squash the railroad strike.
Congress say whatever you like.
We know you squash the railroad strike.
Awesome. So we're going to have another person named Brian, who's coming from United Against War and Militarism, which I'm also a part of. Speak now.
All right, everybody. Okay. So we all know that we're here in solidarity with the worsening and long-time bad conditions for workers both in Europe and the U.S. who've been struggling for years now to eke out a basic living. And we've also seen recently that the war in Ukraine and other crises have made these conditions a lot worse, with things like inflation, rising gas prices, and an incoming recession, all at a time when the governments are refusing to help any of their people. But if we want to actually do anything to oppose this war, rather than just standing out here pointing out how bad things are, we have to actually understand how we got here in the first place, and we have to understand the political conditions that created this. Since 1991, since the end of the Cold War, the United States and NATO, the supposed peace pact to contain the Soviet Union, has nearly doubled in size, expanding into Eastern Europe, pushing closer and closer to Russia. As Russia has emerged in the last few decades as a rival capitalist power, it felt its sphere of influence in the East was threatened. It sees the election of Joe Biden and the recent militarization in the Ukraine region, especially following the coup in 2014, as a threat, and it invaded feeling the need to protect itself from this ever-expanding U.S. empire. This isn't to justify or defend the Russian invasion, which has killed so many, but it's to say that Russia is far from the only aggressor, and that's something that you're not going to see if you look up in the normal media. The U.S. has pushed this war and has pushed for this aggression and is benefiting from this aggression just as much as Russia is, if not more. The U.S. then this rivalry between U.S. and Russia for spheres of influence and control in Eastern Europe really gets at the heart of who benefits in this war, because it's not the whole of the U.S. and it's not the whole of Russia. No working people actually benefit from it. It's the ruling classes of both countries who ultimately have the most to gain in this war. Because what they're fighting for isn't just, bragging rights or, something to flex on this other country, but it's for geopolitical dominance in what Russia views as its backyard and what the U.S. views as an essential region to preserve its hegemony in Europe. But why is this hegemony so important for these ruling classes? It's because it allows the ruling classes to seek out and expand into and dominate over increasingly large markets for labor and natural resources. In Ukraine, this is really important as it relates to food and Ukrainian labor at a time when food shortages are becoming more and more of a problem. Further, in a world with finite space, an economic system that these ruling classes are a part of and are leading, capitalism, that relies on and depends on infinite growth, Eventually, there will be conflicts over where you can grow into. And as rival capitalist powers see each other competing over the same space, wars like this breaks out. As it relates to the European economic crisis, this war has only made things worse. Not only are all the European governments funneling tax dollars into helping Ukraine instead of into helping their people, but the U.S. ruling class has taken this as a big opportunity to re-entrench its own hegemony in Europe. They've done this first by ensuring a sanction on Russian oil, keeping European countries, reducing European dependence on Russia, and then by swooping in with American oil companies to sell in the new demand. Oil company profits have skyrocketed in Russia, in the European Union is now completely dependent on the U.S. oil. This, of course, the U.S., of course, is willing to enforce this dependence more directly, as we saw months ago with it blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Here, the U.S. is willing to freeze out the European working class in order to protect its geopolitical and economic dominance in the region. Yeah. So given all of this, and given that this war really only benefits the ruling classes of these countries, and that it is only to the detriment of the Ukrainian, Russian, European, and American people, what do we do? What do we oppose? The first thing we need to do is we need to recognize this war is an inevitable outcome of this capitalist, imperialist economic system that we live in, and that there will be no end to this type of war without an end to that system. And we in the U.S. need to work on undermining the governments and undermining the forces that are contributing to and pushing these interests of the ruling class. For us, this means the U.S. government and its continued warmongering and profiteering at the expense of suffering worldwide. Chant. Woo!
The bourgeoisie sitting in a tree sharing all their blood money. The bourgeoisie sitting in a tree sharing all their blood money. The bourgeoisie sitting in a tree sharing all their blood money. No war to class war. No war to class war. No war to class war. No war to class war.
All right, so before our next speaker, I'm going to actually be reading out greetings from the Central Committee in Argentina. So they say, we salute the Boston May Day Coalition and all participants in the rally against imperialist war. The struggle against the international colonial policy of the imperialist power of the nation where they are in is the main political test for any revolutionary militant or organization in those countries and in the whole world. The reactionary character of the Putin government and their defense of capitalist restoration and oppression of peoples within Russia and in the region must be denounced as well. But it cannot be used as a shield to disguise adaptation to NATO, US imperialism, and the European Union, the main oppressors in Ukraine and the whole semi-colonial world. The existence of demonstrations against the war in Italy, Spain, and the United States stands in sharp contrast with those so-called leftists who, in supposed defense of democracy, vote the military budget of the warmongers. The so-called democratic socialists have even retracted calls for peace talks under pressure from the Biden administration. Yeah, that's AOC and all of those guys. As Lenin said a century ago, proletarian resistance in imperialist countries demands revolutionary defeatism against the bourgeoisie of their own country as the first priority. Long live the international struggle of the working class. Down with the imperialist war and the governments that wage it. So that's
right.
A group in Argentina. And so next up, we're going to have Brian with Workers' World.
Thank you, all our comrades and friends who organized this demonstration and who are the spark that's going to start the prairie fire of the struggle that is going to start, because our class is is being run out right now. Our class, you look at folks in mountain tasks who are being pushed, who have been pushed out of their homes, who are now living on the street. You look at the gentrification that's going on of people that are going to be in tent encampments because they can't pay the rent. That you look at disabled folks who are going to be more marginalized because the housing available is less because the accessible housing is not being built. You look at anyone, our class is the working class. Anybody here who work, we all work, either works for a wage or get a social wage, like a pension or a social security check that has been fought for by working people and that has been won in struggle. And we have to not only defend all those social gains that we have won, we have to win, we have to take over the means of production in the society. We have to take, only a workers' government will be able to get rid of war and war for profit and the constant making us poorer. The people who create the wealth, and we're being made poorer because of to enrich the arms industries, to enrich the insurance companies that kill us with not wanting to get with the inadequate health care. Just I'm gonna end with, just as we need to defund, disarm, and disband the police, we need to defund, disarm, and disband NATO, and we will do that with a mass movement. That's the only way that's going to happen. Victory to the rail workers, victory to the Starbucks workers, victory to the Amazon workers, victory to the strikers in Italy, and no war but the class war, and sanctions kill.
Sanctions kill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. No war but world war, class war. No war but the class war. No war but the class war. War, famine, mass unrest. No politician can fix this mess. War, famine, mass unrest. No politician can fix this mess. War, famine, mass unrest. No politician can fix this mess. War, famine, mass unrest. No politician can fix this mess.
I'm about to get an interview, so I need it back
Alright,
the way it
so
was.
next up we have another Brian from MAPA. Brian number 2.
Thank you. I am happy to be Brian number 2 after that.
Can you grab him for an interview?
Well, thanks everyone
Yeah.
for coming on a cold day. My name is Brian Garvey. I work at Massachusetts Peace Action. We work on these issues all the time. And what I've learned
is
I'm going to get him
all
for
of these
interview.
issues.
He has to come over here, though.
Climate change, racial justice, nuclear disarmament,
I'll turn it around.
ending ever-growing military budgets. They are all connected, right? Just in the past week,
You can
Congress,
keep
all
up
but
there.
a handful
You got
of
it. Okay.
people in Congress
Can I interview
voted
you real
to
quick?
increase the military budget to over $850 billion a year, right? That is well over half of the discretionary spending.
I think we're going to have to turn
Over half
around.
of your federal income taxes are going to the war machine.
I'm short.
And that doesn't even
I
include
can
the
like
money
squat down.
that they have spent
That helps.
sending weapons to Ukraine.
You can't do that.
As of now, and it's
It has to be
ever-increasing,
turned around this way.
already, we have sent more money to Ukraine than the entire budget to fight climate change. We have spent twice as much
Now I have to get on this side.
on Ukraine.
Okay. All right. I am here with, what's your name?
Luke.
Luke. I'm here with Luke. Luke, why did you decide to come out today?
I'm a part of a few of the groups here, United Against Foreign Militarism and the Marxist students in Boston. But you know, it really, this is our responsibility as people who are living in America, who are in one way or another connected to this war. And you know, this is a really important thing to be speaking about too. You know, the only real narrative that we get in news and in mainstream media is, you know, Russia is evil, Russia is bad, Ukraine is the good guy, we need to support them, we need to keep sending them money, guns, everything. And that's not saying Russia is good at all, but there's this complete lack of nuance in seeing this as an imperial war and a proxy war that we're waging, and we're just making life worse for everybody else. I mean, the Italians just got gas cut off to them.
Your head.
They're involved in the intelligence sharing. Every aspect.
There we go.
This is
And I'm tilted.
They love this. Even before the
Okay, there we go. No, I totally hear you, totally understand. You're a part of the Revolutionary Marxist Student Group. Can you tell everyone a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we are a group that's mostly based on campuses, or entirely based on campuses. Right now, Tufts, BU, I think one at UMass Amherst. We have another study in the Bay Area in California, and then one at Columbia in New York City. And it's really just a way to, you know, students sort of have this freedom. You know, we are at this point in our lives where, yeah, we have school, but we have a lot of free time and a lot of ability to think. And you're kind of at this point where, you know, your brain is, or you're conditioned in the place you're in to kind of be thinking the most about stuff around you. Now, most of that gets shepherded over to these pro-America, pro-imperialist, pro-capitalist ideas. And there's really a need to have some force there pushing against that. And that's what we're there for. And to really try to get kids out of campuses into working with the people. I work with UFAD as well, which I think you're, you know, a little bit too. That's a big thing that we get kids to come from, to really be talking to working class people, to talking to people living in the projects, understanding what they're going through, because there's this lack of understanding that these people, they know their situation better than everybody else. And, you know, this theory that we read, you know, it is really important. It gives you a really good skill set to deal with these issues, but you actually need to understand those issues too. And these people, they understand them better than anybody else. It's really important to be interacting with them.
All right. Thank you so much. Again, that is Luke with Revolutionary Student Marxist Group. Thank you so much. Awesome.
If we are going to bring that thinking into the 21st century. So,
yeah, we could get another one.
I want to talk about what's coming.
Yeah.
We are already seeing the fallout, the economic fallout from this war. And I warn you, that could turn out to be actual fallout if we're not careful. This is the most dangerous time in terms of the threat of nuclear war since the Cuban Missile Crisis.
We're going to get you right after he finishes.
And yet, we are still pouring fuel on the fire that is this war in Eastern Europe, because there is plenty of money to be made. That's why. But like I said, in Europe, they are already feeling deeply. They're worried about freezing this winter.
They're already
Yeah, yeah. And if you think we're immune to that, let me tell you, I mean, the market for energy is global. You're going to feel it. You're going to see it in your bills. And what is that going to do? Because if people on the left are not talking about how we're going to solve this problem, and people are going to connect their energy bills to this war in Ukraine, they're going to get it, right? And they're going to care about it because it's their wallet. They're going to have to decide whether they're going to heat their house or feed their kids. And they're going to connect it to this war in Ukraine. And if people on the left are not talking about this and talking about how this is the corporatocracy that has their hand in your pocket, then people on the right are going to start talking. And I don't mean, you know, I don't mean the average Republican either on the right. I'm worried about what could happen if really the nationalist forces rise up. We've already seen a little bit of it, right? And we're seeing it in Italy. We're seeing it in Europe. Hard times make people turn to some really dark solutions. So if we are not speaking up and speaking out to people with the solutions to these problems, they're going to find them elsewhere, even if they're not real solutions. You know, I've heard not a single Democrat voted against the Ukraine aid. And the Republicans who did, you know, frankly, pretty crazy people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are up there saying, you know, we can't give money to Ukraine because babies can't, you know, mothers can't get formula for their kids. So if people on the left are not speaking loudly to these issues, people are going to turn elsewhere. So we have to be ready for it. The effects of this war are going to be deeply felt, and soon. So get ready. No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. No politician can solve this problem. The only one who's going to solve the problems, our problems, are ourselves. That's it. So seriously, reach out to people of all ideologies and let them know. These politicians, they don't care about you. They care about the donor class. And the only one who's going to solve our problems, like earlier Brian said, right? Workers are going to solve workers' problems. Right? People are going to solve the problems of the people. Don't put your trust in politicians. This is why you have the right to free speech and freedom of assembly. Use it. That's what we're doing here. Free speech is a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it goes away. All right. I'm wrapping it up. You need a hook to get me off stage. All right. Down with this war. No war of a class war. And let me give up the mic.
Thank you, Brian. You ready, John?
No war, but class war. All right.
All right.
So,
You want to come over to this side?
Down to Dewey Plaza right now.
Since they're about to march.
That might be nice. We're going to stop by the Military Recruitment Center. Say a few words about that.
Okay, we are here.
But definitely,
right. What is your name?
My name's John.
It'll be nice.
Okay. The Committee for Peace and Human Rights.
So,
we are here very often demonstrating against these wars for the American empire. And for essentially our point is that sanctions kill, and that we're spending all of this money and resource on wars and taking money away from the people. That's what our government is doing.
That's right. That's right. How long have you been an activist, an anti-war activist?
Since 1998, actually. And I've been an anti-sanctions activist that whole time. We originally came out because of the medieval, brutal and genocidal embargo on Iraq that killed in the neighborhood of 1 million people through economic privation. And now our country, every time you turn around, they're putting sanctions on some other country, whether it's China, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Russia. Every time you turn around, they put more sanctions, and sanctions are war. But in particular, regarding the Ukraine war, every time I see someone holding the Ukrainian flag with the blue on top and the yellow on the bottom, It makes me really sad because U.S. is trying to fight to the last Ukrainian. That's what's really happening. And a leading European Commission figure said that Ukraine has had casualties of 100,000 soldiers, and these are draftees. They're even drafting, middle-aged men with gray beards. It's like World War I trench warfare. And actually, it's not true that Ukraine is winning. Russia appears to be prevailing. Unfortunately for the Ukraine side and for the U.S. side, they have the very effective weapons. And this war needs to end. It's a war of choice. The United States launched it when they did the Maidan coup d'etat in 2014. The Russian people believe that America has turned Ukraine into a battering ram with which to attack Russia. I think they're right. But I just want to go back. It's so pathetic that people claim to support Ukraine, but we send weapons so that more and more Ukrainians can fight and be killed. So we're going to have to end this war. We're going to have to get to peace.
That's right. Well said, John. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Peace.
All right, guys. They are now doing the march. I have to turn this. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. They are now going on the march to the Italian consulate. I actually can't join them for that. I actually have to head back home because I have to do I'm attending a webinar about climate change. So I have to get back home in time for that. But they are already off on their march. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. One thing I wanted to say, apparently the red line is shut down. Go figure, right? Shit never works out right. Yeah, so the red line is shut down. So some people had trouble making it to Park Street Station because of that. But go figure, that's that's Boston. That is Boston public transportation like a mother. Boy, I tell you. But yeah, it's brutally cold out right now. Just a couple days ago, it was just like 50 degrees, and now it's like, I think 30. It could snow right now, actually. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I do have to head back home so I can go to that webinar, that climate webinar. But thank you guys so much for tuning in on a Saturday. Please share with your friends and your fam. And I am out, son. Bye. Oh, I can't hit the end button. Oh, the button.